Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined on this Friday by Derek Brown and Pat Fitzmaurice. Fellas, we are here. We are into Week 16. Fitz, we just talked a little bit about this on the Thursday show with Erickson. So, Debro, I will ask you, how are you set up here for the semifinals of the fantasy playoffs?
Doing good. Had a few teams with buys, so now I got to, put them back together considering all the injuries and all the news and all the stuff we're going to deal with and we're talking about for Week 16. But overall, I just want to get one team into a championship title game. That's all I want, boys. That's all I want.
I was just saying to Erickson that to me, Week 16 is almost the more pressure-filled week as the semifinals. Because once you get to the title game, it's just one game and anything can happen. And,
then you're in the money.
Accomplishment. Exactly. But this is the one where it's I'm actually alive in a handful of leagues. I have a couple of opportunities here to advance. And I feel so nervous about just getting knocked out in every league. I can feel the other shoe dropping.
Can we talk about you still being alive in the Scott Fishbowl down to the final, 250?
Yes.
Worm is representing Fantasy Pros in the
Scott
Fishbowl semifinals.
I am alive in the final 250. As you mentioned, it's been the last couple of rounds have been chopping off half at a time. This is the week where it goes from 250 to 50. So I need to be in the top 20% here to advance. I think I'm starting off somewhere around the middle of the pack, maybe a little behind. Middle of the pack in terms of, in the Scott Fishbowl, you go in with a certain amount of your average from previous weeks. So I'm starting a little behind the 8 ball, but still very within range.
You have Chase Brown. Yeah,
I have Chase Brown, and I have Jahmyr Gibbs now with no David Montgomery, which I'm not celebrating. But obviously that looks pretty nice as well. So we'll see. I'm not, counting any chickens here, but this is the furthest I've ever been in Scott Fishbowl, and I'm happy to be the last Fantasy Pros representative standing to try and support the company and to be able to brag to you guys that I got farther than you did. So that was
well, that's already happened. Yeah, my team went fast.
Yeah. It's one of those tournaments where if you start off slow, it's very easy to kind of fall off of paying attention. Yep. But if you have a good team, it's definitely fun to participate. I really appreciate Scott, putting that together every year, obviously. This is our Friday show. Just to let everybody know, we are taping this on Thursday. There's some travel going on, obviously, ahead of the holidays. As anybody can tell, with my background, I am not in my usual spot. I'm visiting a friend in North Carolina. So, thank you to him for hosting me. But we are taping this a day early because of the travel. So if there is any kind of development in terms of injuries or practice reports or anything, we are taping this Thursday, not Friday. So that is why. And that's also why we're not talking about the Thursday night football game. As a reminder, all of our weekly consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/ranking. And also, if you're juggling multiple fantasy football teams and feeling overwhelmed as we are into the playoffs, Fantasy Pros can help you simplify things. With Fantasy Pros Multi-League Assistant, you can see the latest news, notes, and rankings for every single player across all your teams. It's all in one spot, making your path to victory clearer and easier. Dive in and let us help you dominate all your leagues with the Multi-League Assistant at fantasypros.com/myplaybook or on the Fantasy Football My Playbook app. Also, I think I misspoke on the link for our consensus rankings. It's fantasypros.com/rankings, not ranking. Just want to make sure everybody has that right. All right, guys, we've got some Saturday games this week. An interesting doubleheader. Maybe not as exciting of a doubleheader as we might have anticipated when the schedule was released in May, but still an interesting one with some big name teams here. Texans at Chiefs is the first one. So again, we don't know 100% about kind of injury status stuff. Patrick Mahomes, as of now, has practiced in full recently, so certainly looking like he's going to play, but to some degree nursing that ankle injury. So, Debro, how are you approaching the Chiefs players in fantasy with this Mahomes injury, some degree of gray area?
I don't want to play anybody outside of Travis Kelce from this offense. The Texans defense has been really good. We've gotten middling, if not up and down performances from DeAndre Hopkins and Xavier Worthy. Yeah, I don't have a lot of faith in the Kansas City Chiefs. And Isaiah Pacheco hasn't looked like Pacheco since he's come back. His stat lines have honestly looked closer to what we got out of Nick Chubb before he was lost for the season. So I'm just tempering expectations, and I won't be surprised if Houston wins this game.
Would you say that your disinterest in playing Chiefs players, is it in any way a result of kind of the question mark about Mahomes and how fully healthy he is? Or is it just the offense in general you just want to get away from?
Just the offense in general. You could tell me Patrick Mahomes is fully healthy. That's kind of how I'm approaching it because he's practicing in full. So if he's going to be limited, I don't know if it's going to be enough to where it's really changing how the Chiefs are going to attack the Texans.
Fitz, what do you think? How are you approaching the Chiefs offense in general, and in a matchup against a good defense too?
Yeah, I think for the most part, avoiding them. And by the way, Worm, we talked about this a little with Erickson on the Start Sit show yesterday, how this was one of the games that when the schedule came out, you were like, oh man, that's going to be awesome. Week
Mm-hmm.
16, Saturday game. I think this is shaping up like a really boring rock fight of a game.
Yep.
And like I have Mahomes ranked quarterback 18, and I'm worried that might be too high. Offensive line is an issue. I think it would be reckless for the Chiefs to let him throw it more than like 30 times in this game. I have Xavier Worthy and DeAndre Hopkins ranked adjacent to each other, wide receiver 42 and 43. And I'll have to drop both of those guys more if we get word that Hollywood Brown is going to play for sure. He's been practicing in full this week, which would further complicate the target outlook for the Chiefs. Debro said he'd play Travis Kelce. Like, I'm not even excited about playing Kelce. Over the last 5 weeks, Travis Kelce is tight end 20 in a half-point PPR fantasy points per game. And I mean, maybe the Mahomes injury helps Isaiah Pacheco, since the Chiefs probably aren't going to let Mahomes sling it around like crazy. But the Houston run defense is good. Pacheco's been sharing work with Kareem Hunt. The KC offensive line hasn't been playing well. It's just, yeah, man, I don't like this. Like, another thing about the passing game, the Texans are second in sacks and 10th in pressure rate. So like they're really going to let Mahomes sling it around against this defense? Like, I don't think so. So yeah, man, I'm like, weird to say it, but I don't want to start any Chiefs this week.
It is weird to say, but that's what the consensus appears to be, fading the Chiefs in this one. The other Saturday game is Steelers-Ravens. This game is in Baltimore. We've talked about it before. Lamar Jackson historically has struggled more against Pittsburgh really than any other team. We talked a little bit on the Start Sit show, Fitz, about how prior to that Eagles game, the Steelers were the last 3 matchups that Lamar didn't score 20 points were all against the Steelers. So this is just not a matchup he has ever done well with really in his whole career. Are we lowering our expectations for the whole Baltimore offense for fantasy this week? Just given, I mean, it doesn't matter that they're at home, just the fact that they are facing Pittsburgh. Fits
A little bit, yeah. I mean, my initial instinct was to rank Lamar quarterback 2, and I have since dropped him to quarterback 4 after looking at the track record, which is 7 career games against the Steelers, 5 touchdown passes, 8 interceptions, 0 touchdown runs, and 153.9 passing yards per game. That's pretty ugly. And like, I know the personnel is not the same as the personnel from the Steelers Lamar was playing against in 2020, but Mike Tomlin is the common thread here. So like, Mike Tomlin kind of knows how to defend Lamar Jackson. Lamar could still absolutely smash this week though, because he is great and this offense is great. So like, I'm still playing him. I'm starting him in a super flex league and I feel fine about it. Like, I'm still starting Derrick Henry. I think Zay Flowers is probably still inside the start sit cut line for most people. I've got him wide receiver 23, and I've still got Mark Andrews inside the top 10 at tight end. So for the most part, I think you're still playing the principles in this offense, even though the matchup is not ideal.
Yeah, Debro, what are you doing with this? I mean, Derrick Henry, obviously doesn't have the same historical issues against the Steelers that Lamar has. But in the game that they played, earlier this season, Derrick Henry, 13 carries, 65 yards. So that's 5 yards a carry. Did have a touchdown, not his, heaviest volume day, but still, certainly a playable guy for fantasy and not somebody that you're getting away from, in this matchup, given what he's done for you. In looking at that box score also, Isaiah Likely led the team in receiving, 4 catches, 75 yards. Lamar last year had a very good game against the Steelers where there was like 7 drops and that really hurt him. So we have seen him actually have a good game before, even if the production didn't end up being there because the receivers let him down. But that is kind of the exception, not the rule, given what he's done against Pittsburgh so far. So what's your approach to this offense in this matchup?
I mean, really just same what Fitzy said. It comes down to you're still starting all these players. Like, you're not benching Lamar, you're not benching Derrick Henry. I know Lamar's track record has not been good, and I remember us talking about this game last time, and I was like, oh, the Ravens will be fine and stuff, and then we saw Lamar come out and struggle a little bit. I think what we've seen from the Pittsburgh defense over the last few weeks, too, is their secondary is struggling a little bit. So that might bump up Lamar a little bit. Like I do have him at QB4 right now, but I'm a little bit I'm pretty much in concert with Fitz on Zay Flowers. I think I have him at wide receiver 21. But I do want to highlight the fact that over the last few weeks since week 10, Pittsburgh is allowing the third most receiving yards per game and the second highest PPR points per target to perimeter wide receivers. They didn't shadow Zay Flowers before. I don't think they shadow him again. I think the biggest thing what could hurt Lamar in this is Bateman popping up with the foot injury in the middle of the week. I midweek injuries always get me, man. Like, I don't know if Bateman plays, and I wrote it up in the primer like that as we're recording of this, and people are listening to this. Maybe he's fine. He's practiced the rest of the week. Maybe not. But that's the one thing where it's like, okay, this would be a good spot. Okay, we could maybe use some Deontay Johnson in this game if Bateman doesn't play, but he's not going to play. So really it comes down to we could see a heaping dose of Zay Flowers. So I want to make sure that I'm with consensus or maybe a tick above consensus with Zay Flowers this week.
I don't think we've mentioned kicking on this show all year. I just had to point out Chris
Here we
Boswell. No, it's not even a Justin Tucker thing. Chris Boswell had,
I thought it was a Justin Tucker thing you were going with.
No, but Boswell had 6 field goals in the first matchup with these guys. Obviously, the Steelers only scored 18 points. All of them were on Boswell field goals, and 3 of them were from 50 or more yards. He's ranked kicker 14 this week in ECR. That seems is that too high, too low, or just right, bro?
Oh, good Lord. You're tossing me a kicker ECR question?
Wait, what's the ECR on the Boz?
Last I looked, it was kicker 14.
Oh, that's exactly where I have him.
Yeah, I'll go with consensus with the kicker question.
Can I make one quick point?
He's actually moved. He's actually up to kicker 9 now, so that has changed. So you're below consensus, Fitz.
Let me spend 20 seconds talking about kicker, which is 20 more than we've talked about all year. The one underrated thing about like judging kickers, like the most underrated thing, it's not quality of the kicker, it's not quality of the offense, it's the head coach and how much does the head coach value 3 points? Do not, even though Jake Bates has been kicking well, it's only because the Lions offense has been rolling. Dan Campbell will go for it recklessly on 4th down. You don't want a kicker tied to Dan Campbell. You don't want a kicker tied to Matt LaFleur. You do want a kicker tied to Mike Tomlin, because Mike Tomlin appreciates the value of 3 points. And like, I know a lot of people are all hyper aggressive on Twitter and like, yeah, go for it no matter what. But like, sometimes going for it isn't the right move. And like, it's good to have some of these guys who are prudent and like, yeah, I'll bank 3 points.
And yet you have Boswell below consensus.
I know. Well, I mean, with no Pickens, man, like I'm not excited about this offense.
Same. I don't want to start any Steelers outside of Pat Freiermuth this week. Like, I think they're going to struggle to move the ball.
I apologize to everyone for even bringing up kickers in our fantasy semifinals episode here.
Get Fitz all wound up about kickers. What are you doing, Warren?
Well, speaking of getting Fitz wound up, let's go to the Sunday slate, Giants-Falcons. As you have mentioned, the Falcons are like a month, maybe even 2 months overdue of making this quarterback switch, which I know you were not pleased it took so long. But we finally have a new quarterback in Atlanta. It's Michael Penix Jr. stepping in for Kirk Cousins. Nice matchup against the Giants. An exploitable defense that just gave up 5 passing touchdowns to Lamar Jackson last week. Obviously, Penix is not currently Lamar Jackson, but it's a defense that, you know, when you have a team that's this bad and the season is clearly over for the Giants, it's very easy to imagine them kind of giving up. So what are we doing with Atlanta's offense in general? You can focus, Debro, on Drake London, who I know is your guy. You can hit on Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts, Bijan, or Michael Penix Jr. himself if you want to consider starting him. But what is your kind of main takeaway and reaction to the quarterback switch and how it impacts this offense for fantasy?
I think people, at least what I've kind of heard out in the social media streets, is people are like, oh, maybe we should lower Drake London and Darnell Mooney because of the quarterback switch, and we don't know we're going to get out of Michael Penix Jr. I'm approaching this the opposite way. I'm raising Drake London and I'm raising Darnell Mooney because I think this can inject some energy and hope and life into this passing attack. And holy crap, maybe we get a target past 15 yards down the freaking field. And this is a really good spot for Penix Jr. to come in and just light them up. Like, the big thing about this is I don't know the variability with this offense. If you were to tell me the beginning season of this, and this happened week 5, week 6, and Atlanta was still humming along with high pace and passing rate, then I'd say, okay, well, they're going to let Penix throw it around the yard. But what we've seen out of this offense the last few weeks is they've turtled. Trying to hide Kirk Cousins, I don't know if they give Penix enough passing attempts to really have a ceiling outcome in this game, but we know he is going to chuck the freaking ball down the field, and that is going to allow for some big plays out of this passing attack, which we have not seen in the last few weeks. So right now, I've got Drake London ranked as wide receiver 13, and I don't know where consensus is on him, but I want to be above consensus because, again, I think that you're looking at Drake London and Darnell Mooney, and this is coming from somebody who, in our content league, I started Drake London and I lost to friend of the show, colleague here, John. I lost to him by less than 2 points because of what the Falcons did last week with Drake London. I think we could get ceiling performances out of these guys because we're going to actually see deep targets and juice in the passing game this week.
I lost in that content league because I faced Bogman, who had Devontae Adams have his best.
Oh, Lord.
So that was a tough one for me.
That'll happen.
Yeah. Fitz, we talked a bit on the Thursday show about Penix, and your approach was to not really move the skill players in your rankings at all.
Yeah, you guys know how I feel about Kirk Cousins. Not a fan and think he's been overrated for the entirety of his career. That said,
shout out to you for the prediction too, Fitzy.
It was wrong though. I said it was going to happen and he was going to be benched by the end of October, D-bro. So
He should have been though.
He should have.
I mean, you're not wrong in that he should have been.
Yeah, so. I figured eventually he would get benched on the merits. So even though my gut instinct was to do what D-bro did and move up the Atlanta pass catchers, we should probably acknowledge that the NFL debuts of most professional quarterbacks, even the good ones, aren't normally that pretty. For instance, Tom Brady's first career start, 13 for 23 for 168 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Aaron Rodgers' first career start, 18 of 22, 178 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Josh Allen, 16 of 33 for 245, 1 TD, 2 interceptions. Joe Burrow, 23 of 36 for 193, no touchdowns, 1 interception. Those are great quarterbacks, and they had pretty lousy debuts. Quarterbacking in the NFL is hard, man. And, Drake London is still the only Atlanta pass catcher I would feel okay about starting with Michael Penix in his first exposure to NFL defenses.
The great equalizer with that, Fitzy, is he gets to play the damn Giants.
It helps. It helps, man. Yeah, it's still harder than playing Arizona State, you know?
No, I agree. And I'll just one last thing I'll highlight here, and the reason why I feel good about Penix. The Giants have been a bottom 3 to bottom 5 team at defending deep passing the entire season. So even if it's on limited volume, we know Penix is going to chuck it down the field. This is a good opportunity for him.
I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I saw this stat pop up from one of the people I follow who covers the Ravens, that because everybody's kind of talking about Lamar threw 5 touchdowns, but it was against the Giants. Who cares? The Giants haven't actually given up that many passing touchdowns this year. I think they had not given
because everybody's running all over them.
And that's fair. I'm not saying they're a good defense, but I just bring that up to say, I think outside of Lamar, nobody has thrown for more than 2 passing touchdowns in a game against the Giants this season. I didn't corroborate that stat, but that was what I saw going around on Twitter. So maybe somebody to keep in mind that Atlanta just goes in and says Bijan can run all over this team, and then the passing game is one to avoid, even if Penix plays well. So a possibility to keep in mind there. We can be kind of quick on this next game. It's Cardinals-Panthers. Really, I just want to ask, is this the week Trey McBride finally scores a touchdown, Fitz?
Of course not. The end zone allergy is a very real thing for Trey McBride, and it dates back to his college years. Final college season at Colorado State for Trey McBride, 90 catches, 1,100 yards, 1 touchdown, and he got that 1 touchdown in the final game of his college career against Nevada.
Wow. D-bro, yes or no? Touchdown this week?
I think he scores a touchdown this week. I mean, he's got the best matchup on the board. And honestly, the Cardinals are trying, man. They're trying, dude. If you look over the last few weeks, he has gotten a red zone target in every single game since week 7. Over the last 3 games, he has 8 red zone targets. And now he gets to face, not only have the Carolina Panthers given up the most fantasy points per game, to opposing tight ends. They have given up the most receiving touchdowns to opposing tight ends. I think McBride finally scores this week.
Plus 120 anytime touchdown scorer on DraftKings Sportsbook. Are you taking that bet, Debro?
Yep. Sign me up.
Fitz, is that enticing enough to you, or given the fact that
I wish it was higher though?
I was going to say, would it
need
to be higher given
I know, I'm not happy about that.
Money. I'm betting the don't pass line here. Everyone hates the people who bet the don't pass line in Las Vegas. I'm that person on Trey McBride. Sorry.
That's I think justifiable given what we've seen this year. Guys, low testosterone affects about 30% of adult men in America. Are you feeling the drag of fatigue, noticing a dip in muscle mass, or sensing a slump in libido? If so, it's time to get your testosterone levels tested. If you have low T, Kysotrex is an FDA-approved pill that's changing the game in testosterone replacement therapy. In fact, Kysotrex restored testosterone levels in nearly 9 out of 10 clinical study participants, and its unique formulation bypasses the liver to avoid liver damage. It's time to break free from injections, pellets, and gels. Choose Kysotrex and take a step toward being the hero of your life again. To see if you qualify, visit Kysotrex.com and take the low T quiz today. That's KYZATREX.com. By prescription only. Kysotrex is a controlled substance that can be a target of abuse. Kysotrex is not for use in pregnant women or men with prostate or breast cancer. Safety and efficacy in those younger than 18 is not known. Tell your doctor about all medical conditions and medications. Serious side effects could include increased blood pressure, worsening prostate symptoms, increased risk of prostate cancer, blood clots in the legs or lungs, decreased sperm count, liver problems, enlarged or painful breasts, and breathing problems while you sleep. Common side effects include swelling of the ankles, feet, or body, increased red blood cell count, and increase in prostate-specific antigen or PSA levels. PSA is a test used to detect prostate cancer. Report these symptoms to your doctor. Call your doctor to learn more about Kysotrex. For questions or more information, visit www.kysotrex.com or call 1-833-949-5040. All right, let's go to Lions, Bears. I already kind of talked a little bit about Jahmyr Gibbs, but with no Montgomery, are you expecting Gibbs to take on that RB1 overall type of workload? Or Fitz, do you think the Lions are telling the truth? Dan Campbell kind of hinting at the idea that they want to give him a similar volume to what he was getting already and not overwork him.
Well, I don't believe that they are just going to plug Craig Reynolds into that David Montgomery role and give him the 13.8 carries and 2.6 targets a game that Monty was getting prior to week 15. So over 2 seasons with the Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs has averaged 12.7 carries and 4.1 targets in regular season games. When David Montgomery missed 3 games last season, Gibbs averaged 18 carries and 5.7 targets in those games. So there was a bump. Granted, he hit a huge workload in one of those 3 games, and it wasn't necessarily a massive increase in the other 2. But like Craig Reynolds had 21 carries in those 3 games, 7 a game. That's significantly fewer than David Montgomery has averaged. So, and 14 of those 21 carries came in a 12-point win over the Raiders. So, yeah, I mean, I do think there's going to be a workload spike for Jahmyr Gibbs. Maybe not a huge one. Maybe he doesn't average 20 touches a game while Monty is out, but I think he averages more than he has been, and he was already a top 5 running back. I've got Jahmyr Gibbs ranked RB1 this week.
I was going to ask, because he's RB1 in consensus, ahead of Bijan against the Giants, ahead of Saquon, ahead of Josh Jacobs, James Conner, Chase Brown, Derrick Henry, those guys. He is number 1 in ECR. So you have him there too. Are you with consensus, Debra?
I have him at RB2 only behind Saquon. If Saquon wasn't facing the freaking Commanders who can't stop the run and have not stopped the run the entire year, I would be with Gibbs. And I agree with everything Fitzy said. I think Gibbs gets a bump, but I don't think he's going to get, 27, 28 opportunities. I think we're going to see Reynolds probably, which, I mean, honestly, we need to probably talk about Reynolds here. Like in deep leagues, he is flex worthy. I think Detroit is still going to be able to run the ball. I think that he's live to score a touchdown in this game. I'm not saying he's going to be the preferred red zone option, but if you were to tell me, does he get a red zone carry, or if Detroit is just beating the brakes off of the Bears late in the game, if Reynolds is probably going to be the guy salting the clock away. So I think he's flex worthy. He's probably going to see 10 to 12 opportunities in this game total. So I don't think that Gibbs is going to go out and see 25 touches, 28 touches or anything like that, but he is going to get a bump this week.
I want to ask on the other side of this one too, Debro. The Bears obviously have struggled a lot this year. Is it worth starting anybody in this passing game against what is now a very heavily injured Detroit defense?
Yeah, DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. I think you're firing them up. Both of them have really good matchups, and the Lions have fallen off, man. I mean, it just comes down to how many different injuries can you sustain in one. I mean, not even like one season, like 1 month. Like it's been terrible to watch. Like this defense has been ripped down to the studs, man. It's been horrible. They're still getting pressure on the quarterback, 11th best pressure rate over the last few weeks. But I think you're looking at DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. Both of them have really good, like DJ Moore, the coverage matchup is really good. And we know Detroit cannot stop slot wide receivers. And if you go back a few weeks, Keenan Allen torched them then. He's going to torch them again this week.
Would you rather start Keenan Allen or Jameson Williams in this game?
Keenan. Easily Keenan.
Yeah. They're both ranked in ECR in the kind of early to mid 30s range. Fitz, what do you think? I mean, DJ Moore's up at wide receiver 22, so consensus has him a bit higher. Again, he did have 16 targets in this matchup the first time around. But I can kind of get why some people would say, like, I'm just not interested in trusting the Bears offense in the fantasy semifinals. How are you approaching it?
Yeah, I guess I'm below consensus, but I feel pretty much the same way Debro does. Like I've got these guys, I've got Moore wide receiver 26, Allen wide receiver 27. And
Same.
yeah.
Same.
Oh, wow. Exactly the same. Okay. Yeah. And Keenan
Exactly
Allen,
the same.
the Lions struggled against slot receivers all year. And Keenan Allen, after the Bears offense didn't get their first down on Thanksgiving until we were inside the 2-minute warning of the first half, then Keenan Allen, like all in the second half, 73 yards and 2 touchdowns. DJ Moore had 97 yards and a touchdown in that game. And the Lions had been pretty good against outside receivers, but now with no Carlton Davis, their best outside cornerback, like that's going to be a problem. So I think you can start both of these guys for sure.
And to your point, Worm, I got JMO at wide receiver 34, so a tick behind both those Bears guys.
Okay. Rams Jets is the next one. And this one's simple. Which older quarterback do we like better in this matchup? Matthew Stafford or Aaron Rodgers? Fitz, I'll start with you.
Yeah, an old NFC North reunion, Worm. For me, it's Rodgers by a nose. He's been QB5 in fantasy scoring over the last 2 weeks, and the Rams' pass defense is an easier matchup than the Jets' pass defense. And, by the way, I mean, what a wide receiver showcase this game is going to be. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson. Like, this is going to be fun. This is going to be more fun to watch.
Cooper Kupp in it?
I'd rather watch this game than Chiefs-Texans.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Same.
These guys are back-to-back in ECR, by the way. Stafford's QB 15. Rodgers is QB 16. Debra, what do you think?
I'm taking Stafford in this. This is not a shade against what the Jets have been doing, but this comes down to I'm not worried about the Jets' pass defense at all. Since week 10, they've given up the 5th most passing yards per game and the 6th highest yards per attempt. I think this is a defense that has just quit. So, not only can the Rams run the ball? Sure, they can run the ball, but this is also a really good matchup for Stafford to air it out. And we've seen, I mean, dude, go back to the Bills game. He was on fire. I think this is a good bounce back spot for the Rams.
Debra, we talked about this on the Thursday show with Fitz and Erickson, so I want to kind of ask you a little bit about him too. Cooper Kupp, obviously big old goose egg in week 15, technically finished as wide receiver 155 on the week. If you miraculously survived that, do you have faith? Or I'll say, what is your faith level in him for week 16 as a bounce back?
I mean, it's a 7. I'm not telling it's not definitely a 10, but if you've got Kupp, you're starting him. He's going to get volume. I think this is more of an outlier, a blip on the screen. If anything, not that Cooper Kupp ever comes out in the media and ever talks about any of it, but tell me if you're not looking at how degraded this Jets secondary has been, and you're Matthew Stafford, this couldn't be a squeaky wheel game for Cooper Kupp and a good bounce back spot. So I'm firing up Kupp. If I have him, I'm starting him without question.
It's the most wonderful time of the year for getting in on all of the hoops, football, and hockey action at DraftKings Sportsbook. In the season of giving, we're being gifted college football and basketball, pro football and basketball, and pro hockey too, almost 24/7. So many games every day, so many opportunities to place your first bet. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and place your bet. A couple of games I'm keeping an eye on this week come on Saturday with the fun doubleheader. Texans are getting 3.5 points against Kansas City. Obviously, that started flipped. Then with Patrick Mahomes looking like he now is going to play, keep an eye on that just in case things change with the practice reports, but certainly looks like that'll be the case. So Texans getting a little over a field goal. Then the Ravens are laying 6.5 points at home against the Steelers. I would take Pittsburgh in that game. I don't get it at all given Lamar's history against the Steelers that we've already discussed here. That is so many points for this rivalry, even aside from the fact that Lamar struggles in this matchup. Lines and odds are subject to change on those, of course. And here's a gift for all new customers. Bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Happy holidays from DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, guys. Question number 7. Eagles and Commanders. We've seen this matchup already. Eagles defense basically completely shut down the Commanders in Week 11. Almost all of Washington's offense came from checkdowns to Austin Eckler and Zach Ertz. Bijan Robinson did get 60 yards and a touchdown, but basically in the passing game, it was a ton of checkdowns, nothing past the line of scrimmage. Will Jaden Daniels and company be more productive this time around, Fitz? Can fantasy managers trust them this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's not an ideal matchup against this tough Vic Fangio defense, but in most cases, I do think fantasy managers should continue to roll out the trio of Jaden Daniels, Bijan Robinson Jr., and Terry McLaurin. Daniels wasn't great against Philly the last time, but not completely awful. 22 for 32, 191 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 18 rushing yards. Look, man, all it takes with Jaden Daniels is a couple of good runs and a touchdown or two for him to pay off in fantasy. I have Bijan Robinson ranked as a low-end RB2, but he had 16 for 63 and a touchdown rushing against the Eagles back in mid-November. And I'm starting Robinson in a flex in a league where I have Jahmyr Gibbs and Bucky Irving as my running backs. And yes, that is a humble brag. So, and Terry McLaurin, look, I realize McLaurin totally bricked against the Eagles the last time. 2 targets, 1 catch for 10 yards. Quinyon Mitchell, one of the Eagles' rookie cornerbacks, really tough matchup. Quinyon has been terrific, but I think it's generally a mistake to freak out about top receivers who have tough individual matchups. And I mentioned this to you on the Start Sit Show, Worm. Last Sunday, Joe Pisapia and I fielded a lot of Start Sit questions involving A.J. Brown against Joey Porter Jr. and the Steelers. And yeah, tough matchup. Indeed, we told all of those people without fail to start A.J. Brown. And he had 8 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown. You do not sit top wide receivers. And I do think Terry McLaurin falls into that category. So I do have him outside of wide receiver 1 territory, but I have him at wide receiver 13 or 14. So unless you're playing in some 8-team league where you've got, just multiple studs at wide receiver, I think you should start him.
D-Bro, what are you doing? Jaden Daniels is QB5 in ECR. It's actually interesting because he and Lamar are back-to-back, and it's 2 quarterbacks ranked in the top 5, and we have kind of a matchup rating on our ECR page, and they both have 1-star ratings, Lamar against the Steelers and Jaden against Philly. They're both ranked in the top 5. What are you doing with Daniels and this offense as a whole?
I'm starting all the Commanders that I have, like the ones that we're talking about highlighting here: Daniels, McLaurin, Bijan Robinson Jr. I'm starting these guys. And the big thing, and Fitzy hit the nail on the head, man. That's exactly reading off my page what I was going to bring up too. Everybody talked about A.J. Brown last week. We told everybody to start A.J. Brown. I didn't put Terry McLaurin in the no-brainer must-start thing only because this week in the primer, only because I knew people were going to freak out and I knew it was going to be, but what about last time? Let's talk about last time. Last time these two teams played, Jaden Daniels was not close to healthy. If you watch this game, he was unable to push the ball down the field. He didn't look like the same guy running the ball. The ribs were still a problem. And I do not care what freaking Dan Quinn says. Do not care. Coaches lie. Injury reports lie every single year, all the time. That does not matter to me. What I care about is the film, and the film tells you all. And Jaden Daniels was not 100%. This game, he's coming in as healthy as he could be for this part of the season. I think we're going to see a better performance out of Jaden Daniels. And Terry McLaurin, I feel like he has been criminally underranked for most of this season, where he should have been a must start, does not matter about the matchup for every single week. And yet he languishes in the wide receiver 14 to 17 or 18 range in rankings on most weeks. And honestly, it's kind of blasphemous for the guy who's wide receiver 14. He has 5 100-yard receiving games. He has 3 games this year with multiple touchdowns, and he has bested bad matchups before. So I'm starting all the Commanders. I think Jaden has a much better game, and I'm not going to bench, and I'm going to say this emphatically, I am not benching Terry McLaurin this week. I'm not doing it.
Where did you say, sorry if you said this already, where do you have him ranked, McLaurin?
Wide receiver 12.
Okay. He's 16 in ECR, so a little bit above consensus. Fitz, where did you say you have McLaurin ranked?
13 for me.
Okay. Let's go to Patriots-Bills. Guys, what the heck are we doing with Amari Cooper this week? The Bills scored 48 points last week, and Cooper somehow had 0 targets in the game. Debra?
Benching him. I'm not high on him. I think if he plays like a full-time role, one, his route share wasn't that high last week. 2, I think if anybody is going to catch the Christian Gonzalez shadow, I think it's going to be Amari Cooper. So looking at this matchup, I don't want to play Cooper, but that kind of pushes me over to I do want to play Keon Coleman. I think this is a sneaky good matchup. We've seen wide receiver 2s and offenses that have feasted. Basically, it's throw the ball against everybody in the Pats secondary and not name Christian Gonzalez, and you're going to have a good day, baby. This is a team that you need Keon Coleman ramped up, playing confidently. If you want to make this deep postseason run, you want to make the Super Bowl, not only do you need Dalton Kincaid, you need James Cook, you need Keon Coleman playing confidently and playing well. This is a really good spot to get Keon Coleman going.
Fitz, what are you doing with this, I guess, receiving core as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting Khalil Shakir, but like I'm sitting Amari Cooper. His target counts in his 6 games with the Bills, 5, 2, 3, 3, 14, and 0. So
Spot the outlier.
Yeah. And I mean, some of those games were without Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid, who were hurt for some of them. Both of those guys are back. Only in a deep league with multiple flexes would you even consider starting Amari Cooper in a playoff semifinal.
So let me ask on the other side of this one about Drake Maye. He's actually up now to QB 19. He was QB 20 when I put the outline together. He was QB 19 in ECR. He has not finished as low as QB 19 in any fully healthy matchup this season. The only time he's been lower since he became the starter was the game he left early against the Jets. So theoretically, going up against Buffalo, they're going to need to throw a lot just to keep up with Josh Allen. Is Maye's low ranking justified to be lower than he's finished in any week this season, Fitz?
So I've got him QB 19, and I think I'm probably going to move him up one spot past Patrick Mahomes, who I have at QB 18. I think the ranking is fine, Worm. Like by the time Maye became the Patriots starter, we were into the bye weeks. So it's like kind of a semantics thing to say, oh, he hasn't finished lower than this. He's never finished QB 20 or lower, but some of those weeks there were only 26 or 28 quarterbacks playing. So I love Drake Maye, but stop spreading Drake Maye propaganda, Worm. You are not a Patriots fan. You're a Ravens fan.
I am just asking questions. That's all I'm here to do.
Yeah.
This is a key questions show, and I am here to ask questions. I'm not giving answers here. I'm asking questions, Fitz. I will take no libel of myself. Is it libel or slander? Whatever you just did to me, I can't remember. Devro,
I mean, whatever he did just now was justified. We'll categorize it as that.
Devro, what do you think about Maye?
I'm with Fitzy. The bye weeks and stuff. I've got him at QB 20. I think the bigger takeaway for me is if you're in a super flex league, I have no issues playing Drake Maye. Looking at especially because the Bills' pass defense has really fallen off of the last weeks. Since week 10, they're allowing the 5th most yards per attempt, 4th most passing yards per game. Yes, I know there's some really good offenses that are in that. But if you've been reading the primer, the Bills' pass defense has not been this just murderer's row where you're like, oh, I'm not starting anybody. Not starting anybody against them the last few weeks. The biggest, I guess the scariest thing for Maye for me this week is I think the Bills can be passed on. But if you look at all the singular matchups for his pass catchers, I think he's going to have to run the ball a good bit this week to kind of get there because I don't like Hunter Henry. I don't like his receivers a ton, although the corners have been more giving. I guess it's like maybe Demario Douglas, like just kind of parsing through the individual matchups. It's like, okay, well, if you could throw in the Bills, then who am I high on that Maye is going to throw the ball to have a good day? That's where I have a little bit of problem. because the Bills are always elite versus tight ends, especially with Milano playing. So really, I'm low on Hunter Henry, but I guess it's Demario Douglas.
So let me ask you this, D-Bro, and this is going to be in regards to a player that plays on Thursday. So again, that hasn't happened for us yet. Obviously, everybody listening will know how that went. I have a decision to make personally in a Superflex league of Stroud, Herbert, and Maye. Would you start Maye?
It feels like I know this league.
Yeah, this is our dynasty, which you guys are not in the playoffs for, so you guys won't care answering that question. But I think it's a fair question to ask, just to put context into where we're ranking Drake Maye, because those players are maybe more established than him, but they're ranked in a similar range in ECR. Would you start Maye over either of those two or both?
I would start Maye over Herbert.
But not over Stroud.
Not over Stroud. I mean, I think Kansas City's pass defense has shown enough issues. You have Nico Collins to help him out, as well as I think, excuse me, I think it's also a quietly good spot for Dalton Schultz. Maybe not so quiet, because we've been targeting KC for tight ends the entire year. But I would play Stroud and Maye over Herbert, because the other part about this is the Chargers offense has looked destitute the last few weeks. Like, they've been bad.
Yeah. Herbert's QB 17, Maye's QB 19, Stroud's QB 22. And again, Herbert will have played already by the time people listen to this, but
I've got both ranked above Herbert.
What about you, Fitz? How do you have those three ranked?
Herbert, Maye, and Stroud. I'm not starting Stroud with the state of his offensive line. It's just a non-functional offense, with that offensive line being one of the worst in the league. And I know the trajectory of the Chargers offense is downward right now, but you could maybe make a case for Maye, but I think I still feel a little bit better about Herbert, as long as he does have Ladd McConkey healthy.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, I know that is not really helpful because the game's already happened, but I just wanted to put context to it and also get a little help for myself.
No.
Yeah,
we're helping set your lineup. I get it.
You thought of sitting Justin Herbert in those 3 touchdowns he had last night.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
I sure hope that ends up being accurate, Fitz. I want to let everybody know that they can help shape the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. Take our quick, easy survey at fantasypros.com/survey and share your feedback to help us improve. All it takes is just a minute or two at fantasypros.com/survey. We want to put forth the best podcast we possibly can. And a way to help us do that is to let us know where you think we're doing things well, where you think we can improve. So help us out and help us help you better into 2025. We want to make this thing as good as it can be. Let's go to the next question here. 49ers, Dolphins. Guys, these two teams combined for 18 points in week 15. Almost every player in both of these offenses let down their fantasy managers. So if you survived those letdowns from all of these players, which guys in this week's matchup do you feel best about bouncing back in week 16? Fitz, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, part of it, I think, is like injury problems on the offensive line, and the 49ers having been playing without Trent Williams at left tackle, and the Dolphins were missing Teron Armstead last week against the Texans, who have a fierce pass rush. That caused big problems for them. So I don't know if this game is going to be a shootout, but I think we get a better week from Brock Purdy, George Kittle, and Juwan Jennings. I don't know if anything can pump life back into Deebo Samuel or not, but I think those three, Purdy, Kittle, Jennings, are going to be okay. If you're invested in the Dolphins, you definitely want to check on the status of Armstead, because it was a big problem with him not being out, and the Dolphins already want to get rid of the ball quickly, and he has no choice to do that if Armstead out. I think the Dolphins were without both of their starting tackles last week. Right tackle Kendall Lamb had a back injury. So reportedly both of those guys have a chance to play this week. That would be a key factor for Tyreek Hill. And if those guys are out, I am going to drop Tyreek Hill from wide receiver 11 or wherever I have him. But maybe if those guys are out, it could actually be good for Achane and Jonnu Smith, because it is just going to be a lot of quick passes for the Dolphins.
Debra, who do you think could bounce back this week?
I think the 49ers guys can bounce back. Specifically, I mean, looking at, and as we're taping this, Garindo is kind of questionable with now a hamstring issue on top of the foot issue. So, we'll see how that plays out. But Brock Purdy, I think, has a better game. Juwan Jennings is the guy that I really want to highlight here, because again, we talk about the duds of going into playoff weeks and stuff. And we talked about Jayden Reed. We talked about Cooper Kupp. Juwan Jennings is on that list too. I mean, he had freaking 9 targets the week before, but good matchup for him this week. I think he bounces back. Tyreek Hill coming off a down game. I really think the trio of players that I think really bounce back this week in this game is Jennings, Tyreek Hill, considering the coverage matchup. Because the 49ers, it's been, can we get Tyreek Hill versus a single high team and watch him cook? That happened against the Jets. I think it happens against the 49ers. Since week 10, they're running single high at the third highest rate, almost 67% of their snaps. So I think this could be a big Tyreek Hill week if Tua has time in the pocket, especially with no Jalen Waddle probably in this game. And Jonnu Smith is going to keep doing Jonnu Smith things. So
Adam Schefter tweeted earlier this morning, again, we're taping on Thursday, that it looks like Garendo will likely be out in this game too. Does that kind of change how you guys are approaching anything? Like, are you interested in Patrick Taylor or, anybody else in that backfield, or just completely avoiding it?
I mean, Taylor's going to get 15 to 17 opportunities in the backfield, and he's probably going to get the red zone work. I don't think it's not going to be Keyshawn Vaughn, who's going to be the guy that's going to be elevated, probably the RB2 behind him. And people don't need to waste fab on like Izzy Abanikanda. Like, he hasn't even been active since he's been on the team. So yeah, Taylor's going to be on that RB2, RB3 cusp just based off of volume and red zone usage.
Assuming this is accurate and Garendo doesn't play, Fitz, where will you rank Patrick Taylor?
I will have him inside the top 20 at running back. I would say, looking at it right now, I'm probably going to have him ranked right around Rachaad White, who I currently have running back 19.
Okay. So yeah, we'll be aggressive there. Let's go to Sunday Night Football. Bucks Cowboys. Fitz, Cooper Rush was actually somewhat competent against the Panthers last week. It was against the Panthers, of course. Can he be good enough again in this matchup to support good fantasy days for CeeDee Lamb, Rico Dowdle, anybody else in this offense?
Yeah, I mean, Cooper Rush is a competent backup, and we should appreciate that because we were just talking about the Dolphins a minute ago, and do you remember what happened to that offense when Tua was out and we had to deal with Skylar Thompson and Tyler Huntley at quarterback for the Dolphins? It's great when you have a competent backup who is not going to destroy the fantasy value of the primary running backs, wide receivers, tight ends on a team, and I think that's the case here. Lamb has averaged 10 targets, 6.8 catches, and 71.5 yards a game in Cooper Rush's 6 starts this year. And Rico has averaged 21 carries over his last 4 games. He is a bell cow now. So you're starting both of these guys.
How are you ranking these guys, Debra?
I mean, Lamb is going to be, where do I have Lamb? He's probably in top 15 range or wide receiver 1. I've got him at wide receiver 11. So you're starting Lamb. I guess the only one that maybe like, and I've been all over really high on Rico Dowdle in recent weeks. I bumped him down to RB18 this week only because the Buccaneers have been a really, really good run defense over the last few weeks. Like since week 10, this run defense is allowing the fewest rushing yards per game and the 5th lowest yards to contact per attempt. So I think Rico, Fitzy's right. Rico is going to be in for 19 to 20, 22 opportunities in this game. They're going to still run the rock with him. I just don't know if he gets into the end zone, and it's probably not going to be the most efficient day. But based off of volume, yes, he's an RB2.
Would you guys start Cooper Rush in a Superflex league?
Woof.
He's ranked right between Drake Maye and Patrick Mahomes in ECR.
No, I wouldn't.
I've got him quarterback 20. So, if every team was playing in that super flex league, I think he should be starting, but in the playoffs, hopefully, everyone has 2 better quarterbacks than that.
I've got him at QB 27. Like I would play Bryce Young. I would play Aiden O'Connell. I'd play Mac Jones above him.
Okay. I do have a second question in this game. I just want to kind of ask about Mike Evans. 749 receiving yards, 3 weeks left in the season. Will he finish the year with 1,000+ receiving yards for the 11th straight season, Fitz?
Oh, he needs to average 84 yards a game. He's getting there easily.
Easily. Yep. Debra, what do you think?
Easily. This isn't even really, come on, Worm. This isn't even really a question.
I'm totally not saying this because I have Mike Evans on 2 of my playoff teams still alive either.
Of course, that's definitely not why. I mean, it's not, maybe you guys think it's easy. It's not a gimme, right? I mean, that's not a nothing amount of yards. I
think it's kind of a gimme.
All right, well, I want to see it happen. And
I mean, considering the volume he's going to get on a weekly basis, like nobody else.
Well, we talked a bit about that on Thursday, Debra, with Erickson and Fitz, about how it not only is it something that they are probably very motivated to do, but
It's
Oh, you know they are.
but they're competing for the playoffs. But like,
Yeah.
it also is good for them to do it, right? It makes them better.
Yeah.
Target. So it kind of
Yes.
fits with
Good things happen when you feed Mike Evans the football. Yes.
Getting
Good
Mike
things do
Evans the
happen.
ball is good policy.
Yeah, it's a pretty good thing to do if you like to score points and get yards.
So if you guys
It's
think
an
it's going to happen
offense.
so easily, will he get 1,100 yards by the end of the season?
No.
Oh,
No. Okay. So
No,
he'll
I don't. I
barely
think
get
he ends
1,000
up somewhere in like the 1050 range.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's probably right. Let's go to Monday night football here. Before we get to the question, I want to ask you guys about your Uber Eats Monday night, in this case, meals of the week. Debro, what must-order food gets you reaching for your Uber Eats app for great game day deals when you think of Green Bay?
I'm just gonna go for the easy thing with cheese heads, man. I'm gonna go cheese curds. This is just easy. I'm just gonna take the low hanging fruit
I
here.
hope you
Or
mean
the low hanging curd.
the deep fried ones, right? Not the ones in the bag.
Yeah. No. It's got to be deep fried. No, I'm not just like. No, we're not going for the raw ones.
So
No.
I specifically, I did not make a pick here. I wanted to take the opportunity to ask Fitz what is the best cheese-based item, because cheese curds is kind of the classic. I don't know if it's considered amongst Packer fans a cliche or not. You can answer that question for me. So I wanted to ask you, if I want something cheese related, what is your number one go-to if you were ordering an Uber Eats meal for Green Bay game?
It's got to be deep fried cheese curds.
It's the cheese curds. Okay. All right. Well, then I'll stick with that as
See?
well. I'll go with the same.
See, Worm, I got the right answer.
I didn't say you were wrong. I said I wanted to get the expert's opinion. who is a
No, but
Packers
you were
fan.
going to sow the seed of doubt. I
I'm
see what you're doing.
asking questions.
I know, and I'm hearing these questions. Trust me.
Fitz, what is your pick? If not deep fried cheese curds,
Yeah, one of the things I like to get when I am up in Green Bay is a butter burger from Kroll's.
Ooh.
And what could be more unhealthy than a cheeseburger is a cheeseburger topped with a big pat of butter. So yeah, I've got to get one of those whenever I'm up in Green Bay.
yeah, almost nothing sounds better to me than just the words butter burger together. Like that, just I want to eat that when it's like 30 Rock, where I want to go to there. That's me when you mention a butter burger. I want to go to there.
There are a few undeniable facts in life. One of them is that everything is made better with putting butter on it.
Correct.
It is a real. It is as inevitable as Mike Evans' 1,000-yard seasons. Is butter improving?
Death, taxes, Evans 1,000 yards, and butter.
Mm-hmm. There you have it. Our Uber Eats Monday night meals of the week: a Kroll's butter burger, and of course some deep fried cheese curds. Uber Eats has the best game day deals all season long. Order now for game day. All right, guys. In this Saints-Packers game, I really just want to ask how you're ranking the Packers wide receivers this week. Obviously, there have been stretches where, Jaden Reed looked like this elite fantasy option. Christian Watson coming on strong, getting tons of separation. That stat from Fantasy Points, the average separation score, I think he was third so far amongst NFL receivers this year. Obviously, Romeo Doubs has had some good games. So really, when you approach this, Debro, how are you ranking this receiving core?
I mean, but all these guys are in that wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 range. I think looking at really this comes down to who do I like this week with the coverage matchup and who do I think can produce. And if I'm looking at the Packers passing attack, the guys that I believe in this week, it's not Jaden Reed. It's Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson. Like if you look at the coverage matchups for both of them, looking at what the Saints have done, so since week 3, they have been a 2-high team, 4th highest rate in the NFL. That's happened even without Dennis Allen. They've stayed consistent with 2-high coverage. Romeo Doubs has led the team with a 26% target per route run rate against 2-high, a 25% first read share. So I think he is going to be the volume guy. And so I like him this week. I think he's going to end up with a very similar stat line as last week, getting the end zone at least once. Christian Watson, I think looking at, and if you watch this game, and I watched every single minute of it last week, everybody that played Terry McLaurin and watched any part of the Commanders and Saints game knows that Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin should have broken the slate last week. Terry McLaurin should have had like 150 freaking receiving yards. They missed on so many wide open, deep shots in that game. It was ridiculous. And I think that we see that come back to the median this week. And I think Christian Watson has another ceiling performance. You look at the Saints over the last few weeks since week 10, allowing the 3rd most fantasy points per game and PPR points per target to perimeter wide receivers, but they've also been giving it up to deep passing, 7th most deep passing yards per game. So I think this is ceiling opportunities for Doubs and Watson. And honestly, I do not want to play Jayden Reed. If there's been one thing the Saints have actually done decently, it's been guarding slot wide receivers. They're allowing the fewest PPR points per target to the position since week 10.
The way ECR has it, Fitz, is Jayden Reed at wide receiver 34, Romeo Doubs at wide receiver 40, and Christian Watson at wide receiver 46. How are you ranking them?
Jayden Reed can do no wrong ever in ECR, ever.
I am behind consensus on every one of these guys. I've got Jayden Reed, wide receiver 35, Christian Watson, wide receiver 47, Romeo Doubs, wide receiver 48. I mean, one thing I'd push back on Debro on a little bit is that, like Jayden Reed is involved in the running game, too, which is no small thing for the Packers. I mean, like he's involved in all sorts of jet motion, and I think they are going to run the heck out of the ball in this game. They're 2 touchdown home favorites against the Saints. The temperatures are going to be in the 20s. It's Green Bay in late December. That's generally run-friendly weather. So I'm just concerned about target volume for all these guys. Like the Packers have passed the Steelers to become the second run-heaviest team in the league, behind only the Philadelphia Eagles. Jordan Love, over the last 6 games, has averaged 23 pass attempts a game. And that's spread out between these 3 receivers, Reed, Watson, Doubs, Tucker Kraft, and, any dump off passes to the running back. So I'm worried that Jordan Love throws 20 passes this week, although, not out of the question that with 20 pass attempts, that could still net him like 230 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So Fitzy, I guess, and I don't disagree with anything you said. Over the last few, I think it's since week 11, the Packers have the highest neutral rushing rate in the NFL. I don't disagree with any of that. This easily could be a game where Green Bay just says, you know what, the Saints suck. We're just going to run the damn ball like we've been doing every single week. I guess where I push back against consensus and how I'm looking at this game a little bit differently is Love has been up and down over the last few weeks. If the Green Bay Packers want to make a deep postseason run, they have got to get him right. He has got to start firing on some of these deep passes. He's got to play better. This feels like a really good opportunity for them to fuel the passing game a little bit more and instill some confidence in Jordan Love going down the stretch.
Erickson said the same thing on the Start Sit show yesterday. The only thing is, like, the only way you could, like, drop this game against the Saints is to, like, commit turnovers in the passing game. There's pretty much no other way. And, like, the Packers are just so good at running the ball. Matt LaFleur loves to run the ball. And
I don't disagree. It can't go sideways.
Yeah, ever since that early season Jordan Love injury, where they had to find creative ways to run the ball and, like, pulled out all these new wrinkles in the running game with some of the best designed running plays you've ever seen, like, their identity has become as a running team. But unlike Jalen Hurts, where I'm not totally confident Jalen Hurts could overcome like a 2-score deficit in a playoff game just as a passer, I think Jordan Love could still do that.
I think he can too. I think the Packers need to, like, basically kind of answer that question though. So,
do you guys know how many times this season Jordan Love has finished higher than QB 10 in a week?
Man, like probably 3.
2 or 3. It's not much.
Twice. And they were week 4 and week 6. Since week 6.
One of those is the Vikings game, wasn't it?
Vikings game, he was QB2. Yeah. Arizona game, he was QB3. And then in week 7, the Houston game, he was exactly QB10. So
and that Vikings game was a game script they've had exactly once all year where they fell into a giant hole and were trying to dig out. He
has not been inside the top 10 since then. So
no, I don't disagree with any of the points. Like, the Packers could easily just run the ever-living hell out of the ball this week and win this ball game. It just feels like a really good opportunity to get them going.
Yeah. We'll wrap up there. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and best of luck here in week 16. I hope everybody enjoys whatever holiday festivities you have going on this weekend, a few days before Christmas, or whatever holiday you are celebrating, or any kind of family opportunity that you have, and of course the opportunity to make the title game as well. So best of luck to everyone. For Debro and Fitz, I'm Ryan Wormeli, and we'll see you again next week.